Hope you're having a great day. We'll work very hard to make it better. Don't forget Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Dave Ramsey, Lars Larson, all here on KIDO Talk Radio. We go to our great friend, former U.S. Attorney Chuck Ambrose, joining us now, best-selling author, getting a lot of great reviews on Amazon. We'll make sure we pump that up. Chuck, good to have you back.
Good to be back. Thank you very much.
Now, Chuck, for those of us that don't have the insight of Sean Hannity and all his reporters, and get the reports, whether it's listening to me or other parts of the day, can you break going on with this Russian investigation as a person who prosecuted people at the highest levels? What's really happening here?
Further efforts and furtherance of a sham. That's all that's happening. I mean, let's go to this most recent indictment that Mr. Rosenstein trumpeted from a press conference in the Great Hall of Justice. Just let's go back, say, 30 years when there was still a Soviet Union and you had KGB agents instead of GRU agents. Let's say that Reagan's Attorney General, Ed Meese, one of two or three, had come out and announced that he was indicting 12 KGB agents for basically being KGB agents, knowing that they would never be here, and, you know, they were just doing what KGB agents do. Now, I'm not minimizing the fact that the Russians attempted to interfere in the election because they've been doing it since they've been Russians. But if Mr. Meese had come forward and said that, the mainstream so-called press would have been all over him saying, well, why are you wasting time and money doing that instead of going after criminals? We all know they do that. So what's the big deal? We do that too. Obama interfered in the Israeli elections, or attempted to. It's almost a normal exercise of political power among rival nations in this century and in the past one. When I was a prosecutor, there was essentially a rule mandated by the U.S. Attorney's Manual. And there's some discretion in it, but I mean, it basically goes like this. If you do not have the defendants in custody, in order to avoid making them permanent fugitives, to have some hope of arresting them and bringing them to court, you return the indictment secret. Nobody knows about it, and the only time it is finally revealed is when and if you bring the first defendant into court and you unseal it at his initial appearance. There are also U.S. Attorney's Manuals provisions against using indictments for political reasons. So here we have this indictment, which has already been pushed aside by the Mueller team to a U.S. Attorney's Office and Division, where I guarantee you, and I'll take side bets on this till the day I die, it will never be prosecuted. It will wait 3 or 4 years, and then somebody will dismiss it because it's cluttering up their statistics. It is the biggest joke I have ever seen. But it stacks on the other big jokes that we've seen from this series of characters. And, you know, I wish I could go back in a little time machine to the point in time where the president was first taking office. And I wish that somebody else, I don't know who has been advising him on appointments in the judicial realm, but they've all been a disaster. You know, the guy's done so much that's good. But, you know, had he fired Comey day one, we wouldn't be in this mess. Had he not appointed Jeff Sessions, who, you know, I've seen jokes on the internet, his face is on a milk carton because he's missing somewhere. He's out making speeches and doing nothing else. And this character, Rosenstein, who worked for Mueller in his first job in the appointment, was involved himself in the Uranium One so-called investigation and in gagging the informant who knew about the Clintons. Christopher Wray, who actually supervised Andrew Weissman in that Enron debacle, which was so bad it got a unanimous reversal from the Supreme Court, and they can't agree on whether it's daylight. The collection of characters here all in the wrong is astounding. Rosenstein, for example, signs off on this FISA application, and if anybody really wants to see a good breakdown on that FISA application and compare it to the Devin Nunes memo that came out of his committee, Byron York had an excellent expose on that, paragraph by paragraph. I think it was 2 days ago in the Washington Examiner. But let me just throw one other little procedural thing here. For any wiretap, and that includes FISA wiretaps, which are a little different because they're supposedly intelligence investigations instead of criminal investigation. The Department of Justice normally requires that the attorney who signs off and presents this to the judge, and it's the attorney, not the agent, who is the applicant seeking that particular warrant. It's normally required that they sit down with the agents who write the affidavit and that they make those agents verify word by word every fact in the affidavit, and if there's a doubt at all about the credibility of any source, that has to be explained in full. The department has sent out teams before, if there was any doubt, to the various field offices and U.S. attorneys' offices to monitor that process. So when Rosenstein says, well, I'm the DAG or Sally Yates or Reed Bente or anybody else that signed off on these farces, and they say, well, you know, I was too busy and I just took the word of the FBI agent, I guarantee you, and this is not an exaggeration, if they had found a line attorney taking that approach to a blatantly false affidavit in the past, that guy would have been fired within 24 hours. So, you know, there's no double standard here. There's no standard at all. The only standard is we hate Trump. We're going to get rid of him. He's not one of us. We must protect our swamp.
Chuck Ambrose joining us now, former U.S. Attorney, KIDO Talk Radio, retired U.S. Attorney. Let's go to Rosenstein's statements, his attitude before testifying before Congress. And I can't wait to hear, we'll talk about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, but as someone who is, you know, number two at Justice, did you find him, his testimony respectful of a co-equal branch of government?
No, and it's the Congress that created the Department of Justice. It's not part of the Constitution. Congress created it and possibly in a bad idea put it under the Attorney General. I keep wondering what would happen if Congress had retained oversight of that branch by making it really part of Congress. Now, you know, I'm getting into the weeds here, but there's a decision called Morrison v. Olson. Justice Scalia was the only dissenting vote. It basically upheld this special counsel statute. And Scalia says, well, it shouldn't have because there's something in the Constitution called the execution clause, and it's up to the president to execute all the orders, not Congress. Well, there's a different provision of the Constitution saying that Congress retains the authority to maintain its oversight, and it maintains the authority under the Constitution to take what actions are necessary to do so. I wish the hell they would, rather than just keep talking about contempt and, you know, impeachment. I really think the president should can Sessions, Rosenstein, and the threats from the department that 300 would walk with him. Great. I can't think of a, you know, more instant justified purge that needs to take place. If you could get everybody in the department to flush the toilet at the same time, it might drop the level of the swamp water a foot or two.
Chuck Ambrose joining us now, KIDO Talk Radio. So, your thoughts on Michael Cohen releasing those tapes?
Well, it's my understanding that Cohen hasn't released them. I think what's gone on here is, again, you've got Mueller and Weissman and the, you know, Committee of Social Justice brought forward from, you know, the French Inquisition here that go in and they violate the Fifth and Sixth Amendment and the counsel rights of an attorney and also the president's Sixth Amendment rights to confidence and privileged communications with his attorney. And, of course, who is Mr. Cohen's attorney now? Lanny Davis, the longest Clinton associate you could find. He has been with Bill and Hillary since, they crawled out of the depths of Arkansas. So, I don't know what's on those tapes. Let's assume that Trump had an affair with his playmate sometime 10 or 15 years ago. Why are we concerned about that? The same Democrats who, poo-pooed the whole thing with Bill and Monica in the White House now concern themselves with this morality play. It did not occur in the East Wing of the White House or the West Wing or any of the bedrooms. This is something between him and his wife, if it in fact occurred. We didn't elect this guy to be the moral high ground. We elected him to do something because nobody else in the swath would. If I had the authority to merge his DNA with the polish and high ground of Reagan, I would do it, but I don't. As in every election, you take the lesser of two evils, and compared to Hillary, as I've said before, I'll take the occasionally crude before the chronically criminal any day.
Chuck, let's get to some of the hits here. Peter Strzok and his behavior before Congress.
This is the best indicator I know of the planning that went into this by this coup cabal. By taking their action, their little insurance policy, and couching it in terms of a FISA investigation, one in terms of national security and intelligence, it not only gives them a little less scrutiny over what would happen with criminal investigations and normal Title III wiretaps, it allows them to hide behind claims of national security anytime their back's against the wall. And I wish I could play the reruns of the tapes of both Strzok and Rosenstein side by side, because to me they were almost choreographed by the same choreographer. The smirking, the laughs, the dismissive attitude toward the body who has the constitutional duty of oversight was intolerable. It ought to be offensive to anyone who saw it. And if the only basis you have for not seeing that is I don't like Trump, then you're part of the problem.
Chuck, let's talk about your experience. You've worked at the highest levels. You've prosecuted big cases. You've worked with FBI agents. What do you think the rank and file of the FBI, or how are they viewing this right now?
I am so glad you asked that question, and I've been reflecting on this just in unending thoughts since this whole thing went down. I promise you that when I was working, say 5-6 years ago, before all of this became so evident, if you had told me it was possible, I would have laughed, because I had worked for so long with so many good people. The very idea that this small little clique could have been put in power and essentially taken over the American investigative and intelligence fields for a political weaponized purpose, I just never thought it would have happened. Some of the people like Rand Paul on the more libertarian side who kept talking about the dangers of it, it seemed like a theory, but I really thought that as long as the people that I worked with, both in the legal side and in the investigative side, were still employed, we would never let this occur. But to see Obama come in and put in people like Brennan in charge of the CIA, this is a guy, forget about removing his clearance. He should never have been given one in the first place. Voting for a communist, some of the sympathies he's expressed before, he is involved in this whole dossier mess. And when you look at the likes of McCabe, Comey, Strzok, Page, Rosenstein, Weissman, Mueller, even Christopher Wray, who was Weissman's supervisor during the Enron thing. Why are these people here, and who told the president that they should be left in power or put in power, as in the case of Rosenstein, the DAG? It's just frightening that this little, dirty dozen could do this and essentially ruin American institutions. I have recently, become aware of Sidney Powell's book, and she's been on every radio station I know hawking thing. Good for her. I agree with 99% of what she says in terms of the corruption. But I really hope that her advice to every juror to take with a whole shaker of salt any assertion made to them by an FBI agent or an assistant U.S. attorney is not really necessary. I continue to believe that at the level where the Bureau is still prosecuting criminal cases and where AUSAs are appearing in court on behalf of the American people, they're trying to do the right thing. This is a top level of corruption that needs to be wiped out. And if that occurs, I think people can get back to doing a good job.
Chuck, I want you to hold your thought there for a minute. More with our friend Chuck Ambrose. If you have a question concerning the Cohen tapes, the Trump investigation, the Russian issue, the security clearances, Chuck Ambrose will answer your questions. We'll also talk to him about his side career as well as a best-selling author. You're listening to Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Our great friend, retired U.S. Attorney Chuck Ambrose, joining us at KIDO Talk Radio. Chuck, let's talk a little bit about Brennan and the comments. It seems as if the left is engaging in psychological warfare or psyops through their partners, the media. Brennan leaking things, the charges of treason. You have Michelle Goldberg on one of the Sunday shows saying that Putin is either Trump's hero or handler. These are irresponsible allegations, or are they?
They're completely irresponsible. They're hyperbolic. They're based on no facts whatsoever. And it just, again, shows that Brennan never should have been put in any position to influence anything. Look at the quality of these folks that our former president stuck in positions and possibly even orchestrated. I mean, there has to be some reason why you would stoop to a level of character like this guy who voted for Gus Hall and would have had to admit doing so on the security clearance form, and to make him chief of that agency. Good Lord, at some point the ridiculous becomes the sublime. But, with respect to his clearance and all the rest of these people, I think there should be a blanket repudiation of those clearances the minute they leave public service. If you want to leave them in position for a transition team for a while, fine. But when that duty is done, they have no need to know any further, and their clearances need to be automatically pulled.
Well, my personal favorite is Susan Rice.
Oh, yeah, and I am very glad you mentioned her, because at the bottom of all this, two little nuggets. First of all, if there was Russian meddling in the election, it took place under Obama's watch. And who was it that issued the stand-down order to our cyber and intelligence teams to ignore that because she thought it might adversely affect the credibility of the Hillary Clinton presidency? Susan Rice. So when you try to pin all this on Trump, it is ridiculously a sham. And then, furthermore, let's not forget that it was Rod Rosenstein who writes the letter to President Trump recommending that Comey be fired, and then he turned around and opened an investigation into the president for, quote, obstruction of justice for firing Comey after he recommended that be done. And, why the so-called mainstream media treats this with any kind of serious vein at all is just an indictment of their own lack of standard.
Well, it's the Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. And your prior guest this morning is, has some real personal experience with that, but that's exactly where these folks are. And, when it comes down to trying to have a factual discussion with them, it normally ends up with them throwing an F-bomb at you, and hopefully that's all.
Chuck, finally, your career is taking off as an author. I follow you on the social media quite a bit. Tell us a little bit about, being a bigwig now at Amazon.
I'm not sure that will ever happen. Mr. Bezos and I have a little bit different political philosophy, but I will give him credit for creating a publishing revolution for independent authors, and things could not be going any better. The sixth book, which is called Death Votes Last, is a current historical novel. The hypothesis there is, what if our evenly divided Senate, what if one side decides to change the numbers not through a vote, but by bumping off one of the other senators and then trying to cover it up? And unfortunately, I don't think we're far from that point. The novel before that, A Winter of Wolves, has a section in the back where I go through point by point the corruption that made me leave the Obama Holder Lynch Department of Justice before I had to. I think that for anybody in public service, there comes a point where you have to make a decision whether or not you want to continue in that cesspool or take your toys and go home and talk about it. And I just couldn't work for those clowns anymore after what I saw them doing, putting very dangerous people back on the street under the complete lie of an excuse that they were there only for minor possession offenses when they were drug kingpins. So before I released that book, I knew I had to leave service or I would get fired, so I did. There are fall on your sword times, and I took a little bit of a financial hit in leaving when I did, but I'm glad I did. It was time to do it.
Well, Chuck, we appreciate you. We'd love to have you back. I'm sorry, the books?
The books are on Amazon under my pen name, Mark Rayner. It's a tribute to two family members lost to cancer, my little brother Mark and my mother's maiden name. So I hope folks check them out. Check the reviews if you want to first, but this last one is going gangbusters. It beat anything I thought was possible.
All right, Chuck, don't be a stranger. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for all you do, Kevin.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you. Our great friend Chuck Ambrose, Mark Rainier on Amazon. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave.
But I will say this. There is no way to spin the two falsehoods that Mr. Giuliani, on behalf of his client Donald Trump, told America to disparage my client. One is that this is the first time that he heard about the Karen McDougal issue. Listen to the tape, everyone. This is not a man shocked when Mr. Cohen says we have to make payments.
Even though Michael is describing to him the formation of the company and why it's being formed and how it will be financed, you believe that's a second reference?
Listen to the tapes. This is not a man shocked about Karen McDougal. He knows what they're talking about.
There we have it, Lanny Davis. You remember Lanny Davis? He's been a punching bag on the Sean Hannity show for years. Lanny Davis has returned. The Clintons have returned. Good morning, Kevin Miller with you here at KIDO Talk Radio. And what's that old saying? May we live in fascinating times. And could you imagine if we went back 20 or 30 years ago when the Clintons, virtual political unknowns, disrupted the most popular president in modern history, a war hero, a man who led the Gulf Coalition, liberated the world, took down Saddam Hussein, George H.W. Bush, a man of impeccable personal ethics, right? That this upstart, this guy from Arkansas, self-made, that he and his wife would be such a thorn in the side of the Bushes and everyone for so many years. And the Clinton cadre continues to have influence today. It's amazing. Now, Obama will give speeches, but Obama's happy, I think, from what I hear, playing video games and, making NCAA picks for the Final Four. The Clintons, I don't believe in American history have we ever seen a shrewd political operative as Bill Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton. Let's take a step back. And by the way, you're welcome to join me at 580-5436-580-KIDO. But here we have, off the ash heap of history, Lanny Davis, the recycled attorney, that again for the last few years was Sean Hannity's punching bag, now is the attorney for Michael Cohen. What is it, Back to the Future 3, where they predict Donald Trump's going to be president, and the Cubs win the World Series, and it was off by, a year or two, something like that? But here we have, in our country today, where elections are supposed to matter, and I love having Chuck Ambrose on, where he talks about what is right, what is wrong, and that the rules are broken. It goes back to a young lady who was a state senator. Her sister was a judge. And unfortunately, in the state of Pennsylvania, if we have people listening in Pennsylvania, I know we're developing a big following in Wyoming lately. Again, our commitment is to you here in the Treasure Valley, but the show continues to grow, whether it's in our new adopted state of Wyoming or it's in one of the states we've lived in previously, Pennsylvania. And her name was Jane Orey, a state senator. And Senator Orey told me, Kevin, laws don't matter if you don't enforce them. And and Sean Hannity breaks this down every afternoon. It's like a history lesson, a law lesson. You don't need to go to law school, where you talk about Rod Rosenstein and said, look, when we sign these applications for warrants, we put our integrity and credibility on the line. And that's what Chuck Ambrose said. And if they're wrong, it goes back on the agent. Well, it hasn't gone back on Rosenstein, has it? It hasn't at all. And so now we have Michael Cohen, who the FBI broke into his office, grabbed his tapes, again, illegal. The U.S. Southern Attorney, it shows you that, and I tell this to Tea Party Bob all the time, that if the government wants to get you, and our friend Terry, who lives off the grid, they're going to get you. And they're ruthless when it comes to breaking laws. Now, again, that is not to besmirch the integrity of good, honest law enforcement officials, but if you upset the apple cart, you're going down. And the powers of the oppressive state will not be used to liberate you, but will be used to discredit you, to incarcerate you. So Michael Cohen decides, of all the attorneys to get, he goes with Clinton confidant Lanny Davis. Lanny starts releasing tapes, and it's the never-ending war. I equate this to Star Wars. I equate this again, back to Star Wars, where you have this never-ending battle between the Jedi and the Sith. The libs are the Sith. They always travel in pairs. Okay, now I'm totally off the rails. But here you have one of Clinton's best friends at 580-5436-580-KIDO trying to undo an election that she blew because nobody wanted her. The libs wanted Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. They wanted a real-life lib. At least they're credible. Not the fake lib. Tea Party Bob joins us now. KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM with Kevin Miller. Good morning, Tea Party Bob.
Good morning, Mr. Miller. Is there any chance that we can just kind of cut out the Liberal Steve section of this show?
I don't hear a second for that motion, but we'll look for a second motion here.
I'll see if I can find one for you. The guy is just boring as hell. You know, when you see that less than 1% of the Republicans care about the Russian investigation, it has to make you wonder why the fake media has been making such a big deal out of this recording, which has nothing to do with Russia. You know, the tape proves nothing and should have never been recorded by Cohen in the first place. When you have the kind of money that Trump has, you're a target for just about everyone, including your own attorney now. You know, they're hoping to get some traction with the Daniels case, but no one really cares what happened before the election. Interesting that the left media keeps replaying the recording, hoping to hear something damaging, but there just isn't anything there. It shows the desperation that these people are in, try and pin something on the president. And if this story continues to unfold with the FBI and the DOJ, when all the documents are declassified, we're going to find a lot more injustices that were perpetrated by these two divisions of government. And I would bet and would not be surprised if there were a full-fledged purging of the top officials in both of these agencies. In fact, it's already been tossed around of merging the FBI into the Marshals. Now, we already know that the FISA warrant was a sham and that the officials who backed it, the information in it, were all biased and misrepresented the evidence to the judge. That's what they used to obtain a warrant. Well, Trump's been right from the beginning. The whole investigation is a sham.
Right.
Up
It comes down to this, though. How deep does it go when you have the deep state moles, number one, and number two? We have a free, honest, and open press in this country. But the press is not doing a disservice to freedom of speech when they start making unsubstantiated, dangerous allegations against a sitting president or an individual. When you heard that Michelle Goldberg clip, she wasn't challenged on that. The idea that our president is being controlled by Putin, that he's committed treason, these are dangerous times. And thankfully, we have this program to tell the truth. Because gosh knows the brainwashing going on around the country. I don't know about you, but I see it when I'm walking the streets. I'm sure you've met the people that are indoctrinated.
Well, I've met them, but by the same token, when you take a look at 8 years of Obama being in charge, the deep state goes a lot deeper than what we might think it does.
I totally understand. On the other hand, you have the press that is their UI, they're useful idiots.
Yeah, but we all know the press has been controlled by the Democratic organization for years.
It's still powerful, though.
Well, of course it's powerful. I mean, the only thing you have going against them are the few conservative talk shows and the few conservative news agencies that are out there. But by and large, the people who are Republicans and many of the independents, they really don't care what's going on with the Russians. Nobody cares. When you get a less than 1% reaction, that's got to tell you something. People worry about the economy. If the numbers continue to improve, we're going to keep the House and we're going to take the Senate by 5-7 more seats. That's all anybody really should be worried about. We'll get rid of a bunch of the Republican swamp dwellers, and we'll have an opportunity to reelect Trump in 2020.
I think you're being Pollyannic.
I'm not Pollyannic at all.
I think you are. That when you have people on reaching thousands or millions of people saying the president has committed treason, that crosses a line. That is dangerous.
Well, it's always dangerous, but by the same token, you've seen a lot more dangerous times in our past history. We've gotten through those.
Right, but those people won't be motivated to vote. Those people won't be motivated to do something. Trump's the only person that I know that has derailed the Democrats, the Republicans, and the media.
And I think he's going to continue to do that. When you've got a winner, the people are going to continue to go with him. The more money that goes into their pockets, the better the chance that we're going to have a better government. Because they'll actually vote with their wallet. We see that happen all the time. I think you see it happen. If somebody's going to put an extra $5,000 in your wallet, who are you going to vote for?
I'm voting for the right person.
Yeah, but that's not the way everybody else looks at it. Unfortunately.
The publisher of the Gem State Patriot, gemstatepatriot.com, our great friend, Tea Party Bob. Good to talk to you, sir.
5 years friends, my friend. You take care of yourself.
It's nice to have you on your usual time, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought I'd get back to... I needed to become more regular, so I had my brand this morning.
We're all about being regular. Thank you for sharing, yes.
All right, take care.
All right. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. More of your phone calls next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Nonstop calls till Glenn Beck. Liberty Linda, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Liberty Linda.
Good morning, Kevin. With Chuck Ambrose, that was the clearest explanation of what's going on at the top level of our nation. Kevin, he explained it so clearly You know, it's nice to know that we have some real men left in this world. You, Ray Amaya, Chuck Ambrose, and of course, our president. Now, I don't know if there's any left in Washington, but anyway, thank you for having, Chuck Ambrose on. That was wonderful.
Always great to have Chuck on. What do you make of the Cohen thing and that the media is going crazy on it?
Well, that's the right word. Crazy. I mean, I think most of the American people sitting back watching this is just, the word is crazy. What's going on at the head of our nation? You can see right through it. I mean, what's been going on with this whole election, with the Russians, we can see through it. The good people out here can see that this is all just a sham. And, well, what did he get? 88% of the American people love President Trump and agree with him.
They do.
Let's go with that. Yeah, I mean, let's bring out truth, what's going on there in Washington. And I think the American people are sitting back just waiting for someone like Chuck Ambrose to come forward. So thank you for having a wonderful show. You have wonderful guests, and it's so wonderful to just tune in every morning, Kevin. I do have a very long story, an illegal alien story, but, it's too long to tell it right now.
Always better to tell those stories in the 6 a.m. hour.
In the morning, yes. I'll try and call in the morning and tell it. It's a true story. It really happened, but I was amazed. I woke up to the problem we're having in this nation. So I'll share that.
Thank you, Liberty Linda.
Thank you, Kevin, and you have an absolutely wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Don't forget, if you missed our interview with Judge Jeanine Pirro, it will be on KIDO Talk Radio in our 6 a.m. hour. We started the day with her. Terry from State College, Pennsylvania. He'll bring us to traffic. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Yeah, I wish your interview with Judge Jeanine could have been a lot longer. There's so much she could have covered for us in areas that we don't know about. Kevin, I'm sorry, I have to second Bob's motion, and I'm going to hold you accountable because you're not the one. I told you before, if we could have Steve's doctor clarify that he's taking his meds all the time, he wouldn't do this to himself, and you allow it. You allow by putting him on the radio. Shame on you.
You're saying I'm an enabler.
Yes, you are. You're not helping. You're not helping the situation at all. I mean, they could probably up the dosage of his meds or do something. But, you need to have more pity on that guy. You just can't allow him to come on there and do this. But nonetheless, I guess that's how you run a show. What do I know? Steve, we feel for you. We really do. We don't know what to do. I mean, you skip counseling, you stop taking your medication, and then you call in, and look what happens. The world knows you for who you are.
Thank you, Terry.
Have a good day.
You too. Good morning, Dave. Jim, thank you so much. Ray Amaya, great job. Glenn Beck's next. God bless everyone.